Friday, the final day of the week. These are the voyages of the program Unsportsmanlike Conduct. Its ongoing mission: to explore strange new movies, to seek out new bits and new edifications, to boldly go where no radio program has gone before. Well, Kent's Movie Club. It's El Kent's Movie Club. El Kent's Movie Club. It's El Kent's Movie Club.
Well, Mother Nature, being the jerk face that she is, ruined our week last week, but it is good to see Kent Wolgamon of the Lincoln Journal-Star back with us for another movie club. Hello, Kent.
Hello, and about ruined me. I was driving out towards 84th and Cornhusker Highway when the sirens went off.
Oh, right. So you were headed right towards it.
I was headed right toward it and turned around and went home. That was a pretty good decision on my part, I believe.
Did you actually see it, or did you?
No, I got home before it started.
Okay.
The sirens and the phone alarm and whatever. I was at 84th and Holdridge, and then just turned around and went back home.
That was about the best choice you could have made, given everything that took place and all the video of it as well. The damage, it's still incredible. I drive by that all the time, and there's still stuff strewn out in the cornfield. Well, it's not a cornfield yet, but it will be soon. But still, trash from the plant that was hit, that was out there. It's absolutely stunning when you watch it. And of course, obviously, all the damage we had here in Elkhorn. And we would remind you again, you can visit our One Community website, 1620thezone.com/tornado relief, and find out more about how you can help. So because of that, we didn't get a chance to review Glenn Ross. Nick has been very blunt about his dislike for this. Why did you dislike our movie from last week?
I think that the movie, although kind of quotable, wasn't really compelling how it was structured. I was thinking about this morning. I think I would have liked the movie a little more if most of it was from the perspective of the interrogation when they were all in the office and they were trying to figure out who stole the thing, and they made it more of a whodunit kind of situation instead of, the guys who did it, why they did it. And it's really hard for me to care about salesmen who are trying to convince people to buy crappy tracts of land in the marsh in Florida. It's hard for me to care.
Interesting.
I watched it. It wasn't compelling to me.
But we weren't supposed to care about those guys, were we? Because they all were kind of like
right
scumbags,
but,
right?
I mean, even if you don't like there's caring and liking are two different things. Like Always Sunny in Philadelphia. They're not good people. You're not supposed to like them, but you can still care about the characters and the arcs and everything. I didn't care about these old dudes selling bad land. I think it could have been more compelling if they did it from the perspective of the interrogation after the fact. Like, they could have done everything, and then they could have cut out most of that night of the people just hanging out at the bar selling. And then they could have been the next day, and then they could have structured it more of a whodunit kind of situation. I think that would have been a little more compelling.
Interesting, Ken. Have you ever heard that kind of breakdown of it? Because a lot of people love it.
Well, I understand where he's coming from, but this, remember, is a play. It was written as a stage play, and barely there are some alterations, but because of that, it's set. If you paid attention to the movie, there's basically two sets. There's the office and the bar across the street. And there are a few scenes that take place in a car. That's it.
Yep.
And that one dude's house.
Like watching a play on the screen. And and as I say, there are some things that are different. The Alec Baldwin character is not in the play. So that whole speech isn't in the play. But much of the rest of it is exactly what was on the play. And so David Mamet wouldn't have written what what Nick's talking about? Because that's you know, this is the first of his, you know, he had a real run for what, maybe 5-10 years where his plays got turned into movies, and this is the first one. And he doesn't write those kind of, you know, more conventional movie type things. These are plays.
Yeah.
Oh, and, I mean, that's fair. It's just I would have been more interested if it was the other angle, because then it was just these old, some washed up guys talking to people.
Well, this week's film is L.A. Confidential, picked by our guest co-host, Josh Odson. He gave us actually a list of several, but I had actually, when I was scrolling through Netflix, came across L.A. Confidential. I thought, ooh, that might be interesting. So when I saw your list, I said, that's the one I want to see.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks for allowing me to pick.
Absolutely. So give us a quick synopsis, because it's kind of complex.
Yeah, kind of. As corruption grows in 1950s Los Angeles, 3 policemen, one straight-laced, one brutal, and one sleazy, investigate a series of murders with their own brand of justice.
And
all right.
I mean, that is the quickest synopsis that you could possibly have. But you have Guy Pearce as the straight cop. You have our second straight movie featuring, oh my God, his name just escaped me. Kevin Spacey. He plays the sleazy cop, or the cop that, you know, he's the one that's doing all the work with the behind the scenes reporter and selling tips for money, and then
hush on the QT.
Yeah. Which, by the way, Danny DeVito is perfect in that role.
He is.
And then you have the hard-nosed cop is oh, good grief.
Russell Crowe.
Man, I'm having problems with names today. But those are the 3 guys, and it's very complex, Kent, because it's a movie that it doesn't go back in time, but the reason why the straight-laced cop is so motivated by what's happening is because of what happened to his father back in the day, and it's actually tying up loose ends from cases in the past and the one currently in the present featuring police corruption.
And there's more than that, right?
Yeah.
And part of it is this movie is adapted from a really great novel called L.A. Confidential. The word confidential, by the way, comes from the actual scandal sheet, for lack of a better way to call it, that was produced in the early 1950s called Confidential, which is what the thing that Danny DeVito is doing. It was the same thing. And it did exactly those kind of stories and eventually got shut down. But by then it had sort of set up the tabloid world. That's the one that kind of really started all the tabloid stuff. So that's where the title comes from. So you have that going on. You have this story of the mafia and police in Los Angeles and the prostitution and all of those things that go together. And they're all sort of kind of based in reality, right? I mean, Mickey Cohen, who is briefly in the movie, was the gang, you know, the mafia leader or whatever you want to call him in Los Angeles in the early 1950s. He'd actually come out there with Bugsy Siegel and ended up taking over after Bugsy went to Las Vegas and then got himself killed. So Mickey Cohen, and when Mickey Cohen went to prison is when there were all these shootings where the gangsters were killing each other, right? Which turn up in the movie. The Christmas Eve massacre, or whatever they called it, Bloody Christmas, where the Mexicans got beat up in the jail. That really happened. Okay. So there are items from real life. The prostitution ring was where they made used plastic surgery to make the women look like the movie stars, really occurred. All of those things happened, and James Ellroy mixed them into this story, which is part of what makes the movie so complex. And then his novel had about 8 storylines, a great novel, like the woman who gets raped is a main character in the novel. She's not hardly even in this. It's stuff like so. Curtis Hanson and Helgeland, whatever his first, boiled this down to this sort of 3-man storyline, because there's never a scene in the movie in which one of those cops isn't in it.
That's true. Yeah, because we're always following one of them around. And of course, at times they're kind of going their separate ways, but then everything kind of ties back in together, and they have to either work with each other or against each other. And they're kind of being played against each other by the corruption in the DA's office, the police chief's office, and the captain, who, and by the way, every time James Cromwell is in a film,
that was one of my notes. I was like, that guy doesn't get enough credit.
Yeah, he always, not always, because there's a couple of roles that he played where he was actually the good guy or a good guy. But usually when you see him
in Babe the Pig, which came out the year before this. So he went being the kindly farmer in Babe the Pig to being this guy.
I should have known. I guess I didn't know where it was going early on. I should have known, though, when I saw him that he was eventually going to be, he was going to be at the center of all of this. But I always think he plays the scumbag pretty well, in his own, unique way. And we haven't even mentioned the fact that, and she was the one that won an award for this, Kim Basinger. It plays one of the models or the prostitutes who actually falls in love with Russell Crowe's character. But yeah, I thought they tied everything else really well. I mean, considering all that backstory you gave us, Kent, with all these different things, I thought they kind of meshed in all of those elements of what actually happened in early 50s Los Angeles and turned it into a really compelling story.
Oh, I agree that this movie, it did get 9, I believe it was, Oscar nominations and won just 2. Adapted screenplay, which is, that was a great screenplay, right? It really was. I mean, there's even like some humor in it and stuff that you don't really expect in this. And then Kim Basinger, but it got nominated for Best Picture, Best Actor, Best, blah, 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 and got wiped out by Titanic. But when I went back, I couldn't find my review of this for reasons that have everything to do with the Journal Star archives. But I did find my best of the year list for 1997, and this was my number 1 picture of the year. I thought it was best. It's a great picture.
There's a lot going on. Like, I was taking notes during it, and about 20 minutes in, I was like, okay, I gotta really focus in on this.
Yeah,
I've seen it before, but I decided I can't be doing multiple things at once. I really got to hone in on what's happening, and I don't think it's confusing, but it's like right at the line where you can get lost if you're not paying attention.
Yeah.
Like most people today probably are scrolling on their phone while they're watching a movie. This isn't really the movie to be doing that.
No, you'll get lost if you don't follow everything, because there are so many tiny little turns, right? Like, if you don't pay attention to exactly what happened in what was the name of the place where the Night Owl,
the Night Owl coffee shop, yeah,
if you don't pay close attention to what went on there, you won't be able to follow what happened. I mean, what happens immediately after, right? I mean, you have to know, and you have to pay attention to the details. And I think that's part of the reason that this movie works so well, actually. This is Curtis Hanson did this, and there was no expectation that he'd make this kind of a movie, how good it was. I mean, he made some decent movies before, but this thing, boom. I mean, he got it all right. He went on to also make 8 Mile, or not 8 Mile.
Oh,
Mile? Yeah.
Oh, he made 8 Mile?
Yeah, he's the director.
The Eminem story. Yeah. And he did the same thing with that movie, I thought. Took something that could have been a genre mess and turned it into a really good movie.
I think one of the things I enjoyed about this was with the three main characters played by Kevin Spacey, Russell Crowe, and Guy Pearce. For me, anyway, I started out disliking Guy Pearce's character because he just looked like that weaselly, do anything to climb the corporate ladder, type person, narc on fellow cops. And
that's why they told him lose the glasses.
Right. And there were probably 2 or 3 times during this film where I was like, Russell Crowe seems decent. Oh, and then you realize he's planting evidence and he's strong-arming, people for confessions that aren't necessarily legitimate. Kevin Spacey starts out by, selling all of his stuff, and obviously he's into the celebrity of the whole thing. But then by the end, you kind of feel like, you understand him a little bit. You feel bad for him because something goes wrong for him in the middle of the movie. And I like the fact that, you got these different feelings about these 3 main characters. It wasn't just established from the front. Here's the good cop. Here's the bad cop. Here's the cop in between. They all kind of took turns playing those different roles throughout the course of 2.5 hours.
What I did a little research on it, and the director wanted Russell Crowe and Guy Pearce because audiences were unfamiliar with them.
Absolutely.
So that on the front end, they had no preconceived notions about, oh, well, that guy always plays the bad guy, so he's going to be the bad guy in the end. You go back and watch it now, and you're like, oh, that's Memento and Beautiful Mind. That's Gladiator, and
right.
Ironic considering who the bad cop was.
Yes, very.
So it's interesting you said that about Guy Pearce's character, because I actually I liked his character better than the other two.
It's because we have glasses, Nick.
It is. I liked the idea that there was this good cop trying his best to maintain the straight and narrow in this world full of corrupted cops, and how you kind of got the extremes between Russell Crowe. I didn't like his character because of who he was, because he was the complete, obviously, polar opposite.
Though the thing that made him tick was, I thought, because of what happened to his family, I thought he had noble intentions.
No,
he just took it too far.
And I did like that. I liked Russell Crowe's motivations for his character. Good intentions done wrong. And then Kevin Spacey's character, I liked the character arcs that all of these characters took. And I was sad to see Guy Pearce's character take the arc he took, because eventually he did let it consume him just a little bit. Even his final line, where he's like, they used me, so I decided I'll use them for a little bit. I don't think he would have had that I don't think he would have said anything like that toward the beginning. And I think he's just getting consumed by it. I think he's going to turn into the cynical cop like the others. I don't know if he'll go as far as planting evidence, but I mean, clearly he's part of a massive cover-up.
Sure.
He didn't do anything, like he confessed, but obviously he was like, oh, well, if I'm going to get something out of this. I thought it was very masterfully done. Josh, it's funny you brought up you can't scroll through your phone watching this movie. I was kind of scrolling through my phone because this is a fruitcake of a movie. It's just so dense. There's so much going on. There's so much there. And I was bored during a couple parts. So I was just, going through my phone, kind of paying attention to it. And then at one point I had the same thought where it's like, I have to pay attention now. So I don't know what part that was where I wasn't paying attention, but I still feel like at least with the parts I was on my phone, I was still able to keep track of the story and figure out what was going on and know what was going on. I liked the Chekhov's gun, or I guess the Chekhov's cop at the liquor store at the beginning. That was funny. Not funny, but it was very well done. It was all very well weaved together. And knowing that this movie is kind of a culmination of like 7 or 8 different stories that they kind of fit into one movie, it makes sense why the runtime is so long and why it's as dense as it is. If this was made now, I have a feeling they would have turned this into, there at least would have been a sequel or at least a series of these, kind of all culminating in the last movie, just so they could fit everything in, or at least make it a mini series. I think that that's the direction it would go nowadays.
I don't think it would even get made nowadays. No. I think this is one of the last of the, this was even for its time, almost an old-fashioned movie.
Yeah.
Right?
Some of the audio cues I for sure picked up on that too. Just the way they did the music, which felt like a stylistic choice to me.
Yeah. And I think I just don't see this because it's too dense, it's too the movies that get made today like this, you're right, end up on television or on streaming. They don't go theatrical, number one.
Mm-hmm.
Number two, I don't think you could make it today also because this was still close enough to the 1950s. I mean, even though it was 30 some years later, they went out and found all the locations were actual 50s locations in Los Angeles. Most of those places are gone. I don't know. I think the Formosa Cafe is even gone. I mean, I've been there. It was kind of a Hollywood hangout, you know, where Russell Crowe goes after Johnny Sampanino.
Right.
Yeah. By the way, he was a real guy who the Lana Turner stuff is true. It's out of time because he wasn't involved with Lana Turner until the late 50s, but he indeed was Lana Turner's boyfriend, whatever, and he got killed by her daughter.
Oh.
He got stabbed. Her daughter killed him. Cheryl Crane killed him because he had been abusive to her mom, and she walked. She got off, but she murdered him with a knife.
The look of the filming, when you talk about, you know, it won't get made today. If you think about the time when this was made, this was kind of in that period where most cop movies were buddy cop movies, Beverly Hills Cop, you know, where it was action / comedy.
Men in Black, which is technically a buddy cop movie.
Yeah.
But that's kind of what was coming out at this time, 1990, when this film came out. So you're right, or 1997, I'm sorry, when this came out. So you're right. This did kind of feel a little out of date when it was made. But from that standpoint, that's one of the reasons why I liked it. I loved the look of it. I loved the fact that they used authentic scenes in Los Angeles, you know, and all the different, you know, old Chevys that they were driving, and just and the brightness of it. I mean, neo-noir, you know, it just had that pizzazz to the look of it, even though this is kind of a gritty crime drama. From that point alone, that was one of the things that brought me in right away. Was I just like the way this looks. And it's a shame that a movie like this couldn't get made today, because I would have liked to have seen this in the theater, because I think it really would have popped more, you know, watching it on the big screen than it would have been on my television.
Absolutely. The what you're saying, throw in then the idea that people today aren't going to sit through a 2-hour and 15-minute got to think through it kind of police story, right? There's not enough, you know. Oh, by the way, the gunfight at the end, the shootout, is not in the novel. And spoiler here, the bad guy gets away with it in the novel. Which is the most significant change they made. And I think they just had to, right? Can you imagine sitting through this and then having him walk out and be the hero or whatever?
Right. No, I could not have.
I would hate that.
Would have revolted.
Anything else you had to add, Josh?
Well, I feel like we haven't really talked about Kim Basinger.
That's
very
true.
much.
I mean, she won an award.
She won an Oscar.
Yeah,
I mean,
great point.
Minnie Driver. It was Rose from Titanic. It was like the one award that Titanic didn't win.
Oh.
Her name escapes me from Boogie Nights. Not Heather Graham. The other Julianne Moore.
Julianne Moore.
Yeah. I mean,
that was a stacked field that year.
Yeah.
No, I agree. I think her performance was rather it was kind of understated.
I'd be curious how much like actual like screen time she had. It felt very small.
it didn't seem like it was a lot.
Yeah, and she won for supporting actress, correct?
Correct.
Yes.
Yeah. So that you can be very small screen time and get that.
But every time she was on screen, there was something significant was happening, because she was kind of at the center of, that world. And of course, she falls in love with one of the characters. They try to set up, something else elsewhere. So every time she was on the screen, and she's always been this way because of her, her looks, every time she's on screen, he's just, your eyes are just immediately drawn to her. And it really, I think it helped her being kind of understated in that part because she didn't need to be over the top, even though she's kind of playing an over the top character because the whole premise of the prostitution ring is they're all made up to look like Hollywood stars. It's like a higher end prostitution ring. And, so you're already playing kind of an over the top character, but she plays it down.
She's in the movie for 15 minutes.
Wow.
Yeah.
I did have a question, and this might have been something I missed while I was scrolling through my phone for that brief period of time. But it felt like it was clearly the start of the turn of the Guy Pearce character, but when he went to go confront her, that felt very sudden when they ended up sleeping together. That felt very forced just so they could get the pictures to blackmail. It felt like it was kind of shoehorned in to give Russell Crowe's character a reason to go after him. Did I miss something there? Was there some kind of buildup to where that makes sense? Or
well, there was enough of a sense that he was being manipulated by going over there, and being manipulated by the captain.
Okay.
Yeah.
It wasn't a big buildup, but he kind of almost got sent over there in a way. But yeah, and it was because the captain was like trying to manipulate everything.
Yeah.
Right. And he tried to Palpatine it. I get that. It was just the sudden like, okay, we're doing this now.
Yeah.
It just felt kind of out of nowhere just to drive the story along.
Well, I don't know if you know this, Nick, but sometimes when you're that close to a very attractive woman, sometimes just, men can't control themselves.
Just happens.
It just kind of happens that way. But that is LA Confidential. It is streaming on Netflix if you would like to check it out for yourself. Josh, who isn't the other Josh, the regular Josh who's normally here, is picking next week because Nick is gone.
I'm gone.
He is going to Paramount Plus, so we're getting off Netflix for a week. The Talented Mr. Ripley.
Oh, we tried to do this once and then it got taken off of everything.
Yes, it did.
Nailed.
Yes, it did. Because I was the one that discovered it. I had started to watch it, and then I realized that some kind of notification that said, "Oh, this is leaving this weekend," and so we had to call an audible. Well, it is on Paramount Plus, and apparently it's going to be there long enough.
We're running it back.
That we will run it back next week.